AMC's Interview with the Vampire Season 2 is back, and what a start it's made already. Guys, let's not hang around here and get straight into the episode, breaking it down and highlighting a couple of Easter eggs along the way. Now, although this is the official second season, it's billed as a direct continuation of the first, so episode 1 of season 2 is actually titled episode 8, as if we've just left off from episode 7 of the last season. It's a bit confusing, but that's how they want to do it, possibly because the long-term goal of this immortal universe would be to go book by book. Anyway, the episode is titled, "What Can the Damned Really Say to the Damned?" And it opens with someone breaking out of a box. Now, I initially thought it was going to be Lestat for some reason, but it's actually Louis and Claudia, who have been traveling the world in the midst of World War II, sometime around 1940, in search of their own kind. Now, upon awakening from what looks to be a rough sleeping coffin, a staunch difference between the book and the TV show, because in the book they had a lavish lifestyle of luxury travel. But anyway, Claudia's vicious predator instinct kicks in, and she finds an injured soldier close by and drinks him dry, ripping his heart out for Louis to feed on. A great nod to how she behaved in the book, ruthless and unforgiving. That was Claudia to a T. Louis highlights to Daniel that sleep is utterly meaningless to him due to the fact that he cannot dream. So Louis and Claudia encounter a Nazi trooper upon reaching the border of Ukraine and use rational thought in order to be allowed to pass by. After the Nazi trooper questions the unlikely existence of black Ukrainians, both Claudia and Louis know they're going to be denied or held against their will, which results in them slaughtering the border regiment of soldiers before they can radio in. Louis then highlights that the only reason Claudia even used rational conversation in the first place was to practice her Ukrainian, which when she realized was up to speed, led to her killing them anyway. So why were they even in Eastern Europe? Tracking down any links to a man known as Vlad Tepes or Vlad Dracul, who as many of us know was the first vampire known as Dracula. Another great nod to vampire mythology as a whole. Now Louis and Claudia are burning a soldier's body on fire, as Louis highlights that he just can't get warm. He's rubbing his hands and it appears as if he's freezing. Now this is actually news to me. I thought vampires didn't feel warmth, didn't feel cold, and Louis believes this is happening to them because the blood that they are drinking is blood from people in an ongoing war. They're consuming misery, so that's what they feel. Very optimistic from Louis if you ask me, but anyway, Claudia continues to ignore Louis, refusing to have any conversation with him that isn't beneficial, highlighting she is still furious at him in relation to his lack of conviction when killing Lestat. They soon discover that any evidence in relation to Vlad Tepes or Vlad Dracul or Dracula, whatever name you want to call him, is non-existent, and they realize that any vampire that may have been here hasn't been so for centuries. Back in present day, Louis reads a passage from Claudia's journal for Daniel, highlighting that she viewed him as a coward, wanting to run back to New Orleans, and labeled him as deadweight. As Louis and Claudia search the bodies of dead soldiers, Louis begins to have visions or hallucinations of Lestat appear quite vividly to him. He tells Louis that he will try to kill him when he finds him, something that Louis had already been aware of. This is more Louis's conscience speaking to him, but it's more of a realistic confirmation of what he already knows. Louis narrates that Hitler's death was celebrated in Europe, but the Nazis were just replaced by Soviets and war seemed to continue even though it was over. So they noticed a rather peculiar sight of the Soviets digging up coffins, opening them up and riddling the bodies with gunfire. They are very quick to be suspicious as to why the soldiers would do that, and of course we all immediately conclude that the soldiers must have come into contact with possible vampires over the course of the war. Now as they make their way through a war-stricken Romanian town, they notice crucifixes on the doors and garlic too. the traditional vampire repellents that actually have no effect on them. This excites Claudia for the first time because she's well aware of the vampire folklore. So they end up staying at a large abandoned factory that's being used for basically anyone and everyone affected by the war. People of different classes, some soldiers, some injured victims, all seeking asylum. Amelia, the village prefect, oversees everything and befriends the two. Some of the residents are actually wearing garlic around their necks, further indicating vampire presence in the area. Then they meet a British journalist, Morgan, who was overjoyed at finally conversing with someone who can speak English. Back in Louis' apartment, Daniel criticizes him for only ever telling him half the story, and when Armand realizes that Claudia's journal is causing Louis to come to new realizations, he suggests that Louis take a break. Armand seems to have some sort of hold over Louis, but at the same time has his best interests at heart. Anyway, the story continues as Louis continues his conversation with the journalist while Claudia explores the woods outside the factory grounds. She quickly encounters another vampire, but it's very apparent that it does not look in any way human. It looks more bat-like, more dead than alive. Its skin is greasy and grey, it seems very feral, it seems really deformed. Now, in my opinion, we can quickly figure out why the creature appears as it does when Claudia telepathically informs him that the soldier it's feeding from has died and it should not drink from the dead. It is a widely known rule amongst vampires that you must not drink dead blood. You stop before the heart stops or there will be dire consequences. The vampire in question has been drinking its victims past the point of death for some time, which has resulted, again in my opinion, in its grotesque appearance. However, there also seems to be a supernatural essence to the quality of the blood that vampires are supposed to drink, something I'll discuss momentarily. Anyway, it aggressively strikes Claudia before dragging off the victim she was initially feeding from. Now, Louis refuses to believe what Claudia has seen and likens it to a snake or a baboon. Inside, he knows Claudia is being truthful, but he doesn't want to face any more of the unknown. He's enjoyed his first night in the factory, highlighting it's been a very, very long time since he had such a positive experience. Believing vampires cannot dream, Louis is shocked to see Claudia dreaming as he wakes before she does the next night. Reliving that memory causes Louis to become upset, and it reminds him of the part of the humanity he lost when becoming a vampire. But it also makes him very happy because it gave him such a beautiful memory of Claudia. They both awaken to find that Amelia has been bitten by the vampire from the woods and has barely survived. The residents are terrified and insist on killing her to stop her becoming a vampire herself. Despite Claudia wanting to initially intervene, Louis insists that they don't, as it's human business. Their only concern is the vampire in the woods. Amelia is sadly beheaded by the crowd as Louis and Claudia walk away. After setting a trap for the vampire Claudia encountered, Louis finally witnesses the deformed physicality of the creature and is actually disgusted at its appearance, slating it's nothing like what he and Claudia are. When trying to converse and interact with the vampire, it responds ferociously, and another woman vampire attacks Louis from the shadows. The whole confrontation results in Claudia ripping out the eyes of the male vampire, leaving him blind. It turns out that this vampire is the woman's son, and she reluctantly kills him as he can no longer hunt without his sight. They follow her back to her home, a hidden castle deep in the woods. When they get there, the woman is in the process of making a new vampire, but compares the result of his change to a burned tray of bread. Louis tells the woman that her appearance and her son's appearance is the result of the bad blood in Romania, all caused by the war. There is nothing but pain in these lands. That blood is only beneficial to a vampire from humans who value life and want to live. Combining that with the vampires drinking past the point of their victim's death only passes the suffering on to the vampires themselves. She introduces herself as Daciana, an old world vampire, and after initially agreeing to join them and heading back to the new world to become strong again, Daciana decrees that the vampires own nothing before committing suicide in the open fire, which devastates Claudia. It becomes clear that Louis is remembering his own version of the truth, which is why Daniel has been so hostile towards him. Louis doesn't actually realize he's not being entirely truthful. He believes his own biased version. He asks Armand to retrieve the pages they removed from Claudia's diary in order to give him complete clarity on how she was feeling at the time, something Louis keeps blocking out due to the overall trauma of losing her, with Armand initially insisting to have his thoughts kept off the record. He suggests to Louis that they complete the interview together, truthfully, and hopefully they can meet the Daniel that was so enthusiastic during their first encounter over 44 years ago. Louis narrates that for so long, the light of the world had gone out, and now that the war was over, the world was ready to return again. He and Claudia decide to travel to Paris and leave their experiences with old world vampires behind them. It doesn't mean their search is over completely, and Louis highlights he is still determined to find more of their kind during a heartfelt conversation with Claudia as they enter Paris. And that's where it ends for episode 1 of season 2, or episode 8 of the series as a whole. So guys, I found this opening episode a fantastic watch. It sets up the rest of the series so well, especially with them arriving in Paris, as we all know what happens to Claudia when she gets there. I love how they incorporated World War II into the episode, how the effects of war tainted the blood that they drink, dropping in another supernatural element surrounding the mystery that is the vampire race. Delaney was excellent as Claudia. You'd swear Bailey Bass never departed the role. The transition was so unnoticed. Some of you hate that they jumped forward in time for the telling of this story, but from a personal perspective, I think if it was directly taken from the book, line for line, word for word, event for event, then it would be boring, because we've seen Interview with the Vampire the movie, we've read the books, this gives us something different. And you have to remember, we only get several periods of Louis and Lestat's lives together. There were so many more nights and experiences we never knew about. This is why this series works so well for me. Anyway guys, I'll see you all in a few days for my episode 2 review.